My traumatized rescue dog was clawing frantically at a snowdrift. Inside, I found a dying cop, his blood a stark cry against the white. But it wasn't the crash that terrified me. It was the chilling realization we weren't alone. The world was buried in white. At 5:30 a.m., the Colorado blizzard had swallowed the landscape, leaving only the howl of the wind and the crunch of my boots in the deep powder. My German Shepherd, Rex, stayed close, a dark shadow against the swirling snow. As a former Air Force K-9 handler, a pre-dawn patrol on my property line was ingrained instinct, a ritual that calmed the ghosts of my past. But for Rex, a dog-eyed, pulled from a kill shelter, a dog haunted by his own ghosts, these walks were a tightrope of anxiety. Suddenly, he stopped dead. A low whine escaped his throat before he launched himself toward the old creek bridge, barking with a frantic desperation I hadn't heard since the day I brought him home. He began digging, clawing at a mound of fresh snow with furious intensity. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Rex, easy boy," I yelled, but my voice was stolen by the wind. I plunged through the drifts after him. As I got closer, I saw it a glint of metal. My stomach dropped. I fell to my knees beside him, brushing away the snow with gloved hands. It was a police cruiser, overturned and crushed like a tin can. The driver's side was crumpled inward, and blood painted the pristine snow in horrifying crimson streaks. Inside the twisted metal, a male officer hung motionless from his seatbelt. His face was as pale as the snow itself, his lips blue with a cold that went bone deep. My training kicked in. I wrenched the door open, the shriek of metal on metal grating in the silence. As I reached for him, his eyes fluttered open. "Officer, Alex Vance, badge 714. He whispered, his teeth chattering uncontrollably, before his eyes rolled back. But just as I moved to free him, Rex froze mid-bark. His entire body went rigid as stone. His yellow eyes, sharp and intelligent, locked onto the dark, menacing tree-line behind us. His hackles rose, and a low, guttural growl rumbled from deep in his chest. In that deadly silence, a cold dread washed over me, colder than the blizzard itself. I realized we weren't alone. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but leaving him wasn't an option. I worked the seatbelt release with numb fingers, the click echoing unnaturally loud. Hoisting Alex onto my shoulder, I felt a dead weight that spoke of profound injury. The trek back to my cabin felt like an eternity. Each step was a battle, my boots sinking deep into the powder, my lungs burning from the thin, frozen air. The whole time, Rex was a different animal. He didn't lead the way playfully as he usually did. Instead, he flanked us, a vigilant guardian, constantly glancing back at the dark woods, his body a coiled spring of tension. His behavior was a blaring alarm my handler instincts couldn't ignore. This wasn't just a traumatized rescue dog. This was a trained protector on high alert. My small cabin finally appeared through the swirling snow, its windows glowing with a warm, welcoming light. It felt like a beacon of safety in a world that had suddenly become hostile. Inside, I gently laid Alex on the worn leather couch near the stone fireplace, its embers still glowing. Rex immediately took up a post by the front window, not relaxing for a second, a soft, anxious whine escaping his throat. My 6-year-old son, Leo, appeared at the top of the stairs, rubbing sleep from his eyes, his superhero pajamas hanging loosely on his small frame. "Mom? What's going on? Why is Rex acting so weird?" His voice held that specific note of worry that always twisted my gut. "There was an accident, sweetie. This man needs our help," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. I covered Alex with my heaviest blanket, checking him for other injuries. His skin felt like ice. A low groan escaped his lips, and his eyelids fluttered. Slowly, his eyes opened, glazed and unfocused. He tried to sit up, wincing. It was then that the strangest thing happened. Rex left his window post, approached the couch, and gently nudged Alex's outstretched hand with his nose. He then sat beside him, head tilted in a posture of profound, sorrowful protection that sent a shiver down my spine. Most rescue dogs, especially ones with trauma like Rex, are terrified of uniforms, of the authoritative scent of law enforcement. I'd spent a year teaching him that my own quiet life was a safe space from whatever horrors he'd endured. Yet here he was, offering comfort to a uniformed officer as if he were a long-lost friend. As Alex's gaze cleared and focused on the dog, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, not just confusion, but a flash of stunned recognition. An unspoken conversation passed between man and dog, and in that moment, I knew this was no random accident, and my dog was no ordinary rescue. The blizzard raged for 3 days, cutting us off from the world. The roads were impassable, the phone lines dead. My cabin became a strange, temporary sanctuary, filled with an unspoken tension. Alex, recovering slowly, was quiet and reserved, his eyes constantly straying to the windows. But most unsettling part was the bond that formed between him and Rex. It was instantaneous and profound. Rex became Alex's shadow, following him from room to room. When Alex's head throbbed with pain, Rex would rest his muzzle on his knee. I watched them one afternoon by the fire. Alex was staring into the flames, lost in thought, his hand unconsciously stroking Rex's head, his fingers tracing the familiar shape of the dog's skull. It wasn't the tentative touch of a stranger. It was the familiar, absent-minded gesture of a lifelong companion. As a former handler, I knew canine behavior. I'd seen dogs bond with their partners, a connection forged in trust and shared danger. This was that. But how? Rex's file from the shelter was thin, found wandering, severe anxiety, unresponsive to commands, shows fear of loud noises and uniforms. There was no mention of police work. That evening, after I tucked Leo into bed, I decided to push. I sat in the armchair across from Alex. Rex was lying with his head in the officer's lap. It's strange, I began casually, my voice soft. Rex doesn't usually warm up to people so fast, especially anyone with a badge. Alex's hand stilled on Rex's fur. He visibly tensed, his gaze dropping to the floor. He didn't look at me when he spoke. I had a partner once, a canine detective. His dog looked a lot like Rex. Best dog I ever knew. His voice was thick with a carefully controlled grief. He was killed in the line of duty. The dog, I mean. The lie was subtle, but I caught it. A flicker in his eyes, the slight hesitation before he said the dog. My training wasn't just with animals. It was in reading people, in spotting the tells. He was hiding something, protecting a story far more painful than he was letting on. I thought of my own partner, a Belgian Malinois named Echo, who'd saved my life in Afghanistan at the cost of his own. I knew the look of a man grieving a partner, and it was the same look I saw in Alex's eyes, and heartbreakingly, the same lost, loyal look I sometimes saw in Rex's. Your partner's dog, I repeated softly. What was his name? Alex looked at Rex, a deep, soul-crushing sadness in his eyes. His name was Bruno. The hesitation was there again. Rex whined softly, as if correcting him. My heart ached. Alex was telling a story that was true in spirit, but false in its details. And my dog, my broken, silent rescue dog, knew the real story. On the fourth morning, the snowplows finally broke through. The fragile peace of our isolation was shattered by the crunch of tires in my driveway. A local sheriff's patrol car pulled up. My blood ran cold. I saw the look of pure terror flash across Alex's face. Get in the kitchen. Now. I whispered, my voice tight. He didn't hesitate. He and Rex moved as one, disappearing from view just as the heavy knock came at the door. I opened it to find Sheriff Miller standing on my porch, a folksy, disarming smile on his face that didn't reach his cold, calculating eyes. Morning, Maya, he said, his gaze sweeping past me into the house. Heard you might have had some excitement up here. We found an abandoned cruiser down by the bridge. Officer Vance, you seen anything? My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. Just a storm, Sheriff. Rex and I have been hunkered down. From the kitchen, I heard a low, threatening growl. It was Rex. Miller's eyes darted towards the sound. Dog seems a bit on edge. He doesn't like strangers, I said, stepping slightly to block his view. My mind was racing. Alex's fear, Rex's immediate hostility. It was a reaction of recognition, a threat assessment. Miller's radio crackled, and I saw Alex flinch from the corner of my eye. Rex's growling intensified, a continuous, menacing rumble. The sheriff's hand drifted casually toward his service weapon. The air in the room grew thick, charged with danger. After a few more tense minutes of questioning, Miller finally left, promising to check back in. The moment his car was gone, I stormed into the kitchen. Alex was pale, leaning against the counter for support. Rex was pressed against his leg, a furry guardian still bristling with aggression. "That's it," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of fear and anger. "You tell me what the hell is going on right now. Why does my dog want to rip that man's throat out?" Alex finally broke. He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. The story came pouring out, a torrent of grief and betrayal. He was an undercover internal affairs detective. For 18 months, he'd been investigating a corruption ring within the county, a trafficking operation run by none other than Sheriff Miller. My partner, Detective Mike Sullivan. Miller had him murdered 2 years ago when he got too close. Alex choked out. They made it look like a botched drug bust. He looked from me to the dog, his eyes filled with tears. Rex wasn't just like Mike's dog, Maya. He was Mike's dog, his canine partner. His real name isn't Rex. It's Justice. The world tilted on its axis. Every strange look, every protective gesture, every moment of silent understanding between them clicked into place. Rex wasn't traumatized by a uniform. He was traumatized by the men who had worn it when they murdered his handler in front of him. The shelter had renamed him. They said he was too broken to work, too haunted to be adopted by another cop. That crash, I whispered, the horrifying truth dawning on me. It wasn't an accident. No, Alex said, his voice grim. They found out who I was. They tried to finish what they started. Suddenly, the rumble of multiple engines echoed from the road. 3 SUVs were barreling out my driveway. Miller was back, and he wasn't here to talk. My military training slammed into place, shoving the fear aside and replacing it with ice-cold focus. The world narrowed to threats, cover, and fields of fire. "Alex," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. "Get Leo and Justice. Go to the basement storm cellar. The door is reinforced steel. Bar it from the inside. Do not, under any circumstances, come out until I get you. Go!" He nodded, his face grim, and grabbed a terrified Leo. "Justice with me," he commanded, and the dog, hearing his real name and the authority in Alex's voice, instantly obeyed. I sprinted to my bedroom, unlocked my gun cabinet, and pulled out my service rifle, a familiar and reassuring weight in my hands. I checked the magazine, chamber round, and took a position by the living room window, just as the first of Miller's men stepped out of their vehicle. They weren't cops. They were thugs, armed for a war. The first shot shattered the window above my head, spraying glass across the floor where Leo had been playing just hours before. The sound was a desecration of my home, of my son's sanctuary, and it unleashed a fury in me I hadn't felt since I left the service. I returned fire, a single precise shot that punched through the lead vehicle's windshield. A man screamed. They scattered, diving for cover. From the basement, I heard Justice's ferocious barking, not the sound of a scared rescue, but the battle cry of a police K-9 reawakened. He was standing his ground with his new family. "Williams, just give us Vance." Miller's voice bellowed across the snow. "Nobody else has to get hurt." It was a liar's promise, and we both knew it. I sighted down my scope. These men had invaded my home, threatened my son, and tried to murder the man I'd saved. They had destroyed one family 2 years ago. They would not destroy mine. The next few minutes were a blur of cordite, adrenaline, and calculated violence. They tried to flank the house, coming from the back and front simultaneously. Glass exploded in the kitchen. A figure crashed through the shattered frame. I pivoted, my shotgun roaring twice, the concussive force stopping him cold. Another man tried to come through the front window, and I met him with the same brutal finality. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and splintered wood. Chunks of masonry from the fireplace exploded around me, stinging my face. Through it all, Justice's barking was a constant, furious anchor from below, a reminder of who and what I was fighting for. I moved through my ruined home with a deadly efficiency I had prayed I'd never need again. One by one, I neutralized the threats until an eerie silence fell, broken only by the ringing in my ears and the whimpering of a wounded man outside. I stood in the wreckage of my living room, my whole body trembling from the adrenaline dump. "It's over," I yelled, my voice hoarse. "It's clear." Footsteps pounded up the basement stairs. Justice was first, a blur of black and tan fur. He bounded toward me, whining and pressing his body against my legs, checking me for injuries with his nose. Alex followed, holding a wide-eyed Leo in his arms. My son looked at the bullet holes, the shattered glass, and the stillness of the fallen men with a terrifyingly calm curiosity. He then looked at me. "Did you win, Mom?" he asked, his small voice cutting through the ringing in my ears. I knelt and pulled him into a fierce hug, burying my face in his hair as the tears finally came. "Yes, sweetie," I whispered, my voice thick. "We won." The arrival of the FBI a few hours later felt surreal. They found the three of us and a very contented dog sitting at the kitchen table, wrapped in blankets and drinking hot chocolate amidst the debris. Alex's evidence, now secure, was enough to expose the entire trafficking ring and bring justice for his murder partner, Mike. But in the quiet aftermath, I knew a different kind of justice had been served that day. A dog had found a man who shared his grief. A man had found a reason to keep fighting, and a mother and son had found that their tiny, quiet world was worth defending with everything they had. 6 months later, I stood on the porch, watching the first gentle snow of the season begin to fall. The bullet holes were patched, the windows replaced, but the cabin would never be the same. Neither would we. A car pulled into the driveway. It wasn't a patrol car, but Alex's personal truck. Justice, or Rex as we still affectionately called him, let out a joyful bark and bounded down the steps, tail wagging furiously. The trembling, anxious dog I had rescued was gone, replaced by a confident, happy protector. Leo ran out to meet them, launching himself into Alex's arms. They had come to spend the weekend, a new tradition in our new, unconventional family. Alex had taken a position with the FBI in Denver, close enough to be a constant presence in our lives. Watching them build a snowman, their laughter mixing with Rex's happy barks, a profound sense of peace settled over me. We were a collection of broken souls who, in the midst of a violent snowstorm, had managed to rescue each other. Sometimes the most important rescues happen when you aren't even looking for something to save. Life has a funny way of bringing you exactly what you need, even if it comes in the form of a crashed police car and a dog with a secret past. Have you ever had an unexpected rescue change your life? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. But please, let's all comment with respect for each other's experiences. If you enjoyed our story, please consider liking and subscribing for more.